But what CrossFit has done is get you to do more work in less time. We build in these workouts with varying different movements, whether they're body weight gymnastics, aerobic, where we're moving objects or lifting objects, adding in the element for time. There's a sense of urgency about getting the work done, and that brings in that element of improving fitness, and then that will translate into better aerobic, capacity, more strength, more lean muscle mass.
Welcome to the CoachMD Podcast. I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, bringing you 3 decades of experience as a physician and a coach. Join us as we navigate the maze of medical advice with real-life stories, empowering you to take charge of your health. In our That Happens segment, guests share transformative experiences, reminding us that we're all human and not just patients. So get ready for a journey into healthcare reimagined, where empowerment and discovery pave the way. Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I made it my goal to help people create strong minds, healthy bodies, and unshakable spirits. And in that regard, I launched the CoachMD Podcast because many people, including many of my patients, they had me because I was interested in what they were interested in, what they were doing, what they were researching on the internet, for instance. But most people don't really have a doctor to go to when they really need information. What kind of information? Well, so many times you'll go to the doctor's office and they'll say, okay, you need to diet and exercise. Okay, all right. So what does that mean? Can you give me some guidance? Diet and exercise. Okay, what kind of diet? What kind of exercise? Oh, just diet and exercise. It never works. So I like to have people on my on the CoachMD podcast who sometimes have taken parts of their health care journey into their own hands because they really haven't had the guidance or faith or confidence in the conventional way that medicine is practiced, and that's an interesting term, practiced, because I was in clinical practice for over 30 years, and yes, that kind of does mean kind of going with the flow. Most doctors, it's more of an art than a science, and the majority of doctors are not really delivering Medicare and delivering medicine and medical care in a very thoughtful or common sense approach. So I know for myself, I had to kind of, with the knowledge I had, kind of carve my own path. And today my guest is Tracy Magee, who has a phenomenal fitness journey, but a life journey in general. And we're going to go over that because, as you know, as my listeners know, I like to talk about how people get to where they are today, because we're all a product of our history, of our past, of our childhood, and I'm no exclusion from that. So, Tracy, thank you so much for coming on the program today. I'm so excited to share your story with my audience.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So, Tracy, we'll fast forward to kind of present day and then we'll go back. But Tracy competed in the CrossFit Games, the CrossFit Masters Games, and CrossFit, and my listeners know I participate in CrossFit. I've been doing it now for about 5.5 years. And we'll talk a lot about that going forward. But Tracy is considered a Masters athlete, okay? And I put that in quotes because, I'm going to be 65 this year, which I can't believe. That blows me away. And I say that 65 is the new 30. So 50s is the new 20, Tracy. So
yes.
That's the new, and with your training, if you could just tell my audience what the CrossFit Games, what does that really mean? What is that? Or what was it?
So for the CrossFit Games, so the event that I was at in Birmingham, Alabama, is actually a culmination of stages of competition, and this is the worldwide competition and event. So you go through the open, quarterfinals, semifinals, and then they take in my division. So there's within the Masters, there's age divisions 35 through 39, all the way through to, I think it's 70 plus. And I'm in the 55 to 59-year-old division, so I am on the older end of the spectrum of Masters athletes, and I've been in this for quite some time. So yeah, this is the worldwide test of fitness at the end of this kind of season, the end of competition. So it kind of it culminates in all of not only just your year of training, but your years of training. And as you kind of progress through fitness and through CrossFit, and you get to do like all those different tests of fitness that hopefully kind of touch on every aspect of fitness. And yeah, it's very exciting. It's very grueling. So it's a number of days. Yeah. So it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's 4 days of competition. Wow. And yeah, pretty intense. We've got 2, maybe 3 like workouts per day, generally 2. And yeah, so you're definitely fully spent by the time the competition is over. But yeah, it was really fantastic because you're amongst athletes from all over the world, and and from myself personally, having been in the Masters community for quite some time, a lot of familiar faces, like people that I would have seen over the circuit over the years, at the cross, or through CrossFit competitions. And yeah, so this is my second time competing as a Masters CrossFit athlete. I also qualified in 2015 when I was a young master,
right.
But 45 to 49. So yeah, so this was a really, really fantastic opportunity to get to do it a second time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, people have heard probably the term CrossFit. It has, so many different, people have so many different ideas about it. CrossFit, the CrossFit Games, which is up into, what age is it up until before it becomes Masters?
I think at 35. So
35.
then 35 to 39, then yeah, that's individual. So
right.
Then beyond that then is Masters.
Right.
Yeah.
So up until 35, the men and women who compete are labeled, and really they proclaim the fittest people on earth. And since when I started doing, and I did so many different things in the past, but there was nothing like CrossFit, because CrossFit is a combination. You think of cross training and fitness, and it was developed by Greg Glassman, no relation to me.
Interesting.
Right. And he founded CrossFit. He was a gymnast, and he saw that many of the gymnastic moves could really be shown to non-athletes, so to speak, and teach them how to become fit. And I remember when I had a buddy of mine who wasn't a formal CrossFit class, but it was kind of a CrossFit light, we used to call it. But it was all the similar movements, and he was trying to get me to do that for so long. And I just had so many different excuses. I just didn't have the time. I worked out on my own at home, and I thought I was getting the right level of aerobics and strength and all that. But not until you start doing CrossFit do you realize just how great it is for a full body experience and workout. And when did you start getting involved in CrossFit or actually, as far as fitness goes, when did you start getting interested in fitness?
Yeah, well, I'll try to abbreviate this as much as I possibly can, because I've been pretty much in fitness like my whole life, from the time I was like a teenager, maybe an older teenager, but this was just the only thing that was really available were just regular gyms, what we consider kind of global gyms right now. And it was just bodybuilding style strength stuff. And then there were just like machines. Yeah. So I always did like aerobics, what kind of strength I could possibly do. And, and that went on for years, because really that's all just the nature of fitness kind of back then. I mean, in high school, I grew up in Ireland and Dublin, so there isn't as much opportunity for sports as there is. And even nowadays there is, but back then there wasn't. So I probably did track and field was mostly what I would have done. So when I got into my 30s, again, attending mostly like gyms, we moved, maybe it was a little older. We moved over to Thailand, and then I didn't have access to a gym, because I used to go to a gym where I worked. I was in corporate America. And then I got into running like a little bit more, and was never a big fan of it, but I was actually just I had a natural, propensity for it. Like it was definitely something that I found myself that I was good at, but it was in a very, very hot climate. So that was tough in terms of getting used to it. But literally that's all I really was able to do, was like run outside, and then there was a little small gym that I would go to and I would do. So I did the separate things, like the strength separate, and then the running separate. But with the hotter climate, I guess I adapted to that challenging kind of environment of running. And then when we came back to the United States after I had my third child, I did not go back to corporate America, and I got more involved in the fitness industry. And this is when I started seeing a lot of it where I didn't really like the way, we were taught to train, or, and I thought we could do things differently. But I got very competitive with my running. So I became, that stage, I hadn't quite gone into the masters yet. I was still younger, so masters, but then I got in the once I entered 40, because in running it's 40 and above before your masters. So I was on the masters circuit. So I became a competitive distance runner, marathoner, and I've done like 20 marathons and half marathons and whatever. So I always placed up in the, I've won multiple, like in the masters division, like masters. So I was very good endurance athlete. But again, I always balanced it out with the strength components, like within the gym. And it was when I was working at a fitness center. It was more of a sports center also, because my children, when they were very little, used to go there. That I saw this. It was a notice for an event that was coming up, and this was when like adventure races became very popularized, like in the 2000s, the later 2000s, and it combined all of those, just different elements of lifting things, climbing, all that sort of thing, and running. And I'm like, well, this is more my speed. This is what I like. I like running, but I also like being able to use my body, from strength purposes and that sort of thing. So one of the events that I went to was called the Civilian Military Combine, and they had this, what they called the pit, and it was like, they were AMRAPs, which I'd never heard of at that point. And if you do CrossFit now, we know what they are, as many reps as possible. And remember, it was kettlebell swings, thrusters, box jumps, and burpees. And again, having had such a good endurance base, and it was a big long run as well, up a mountain assault and back down again, and lifting things and climbing and whatever. And that's where I met some like CrossFit people, and I learned about CrossFit, and I'm like, oh, what's CrossFit? And I realized that I kind of been trying to do it, my version of it, like within the gym, because I wouldn't just do circuit training more than, just your conventional bodybuilding, because that's really like all that existed then. So it kind of piqued my interest, and I would say that was probably about 2011, maybe 2010, 2011. So I continued just doing my own, mixing up my own programming, and I was still competitively running competitively. I would do probably maybe 2 marathons a year, and then shorter distance 5K through, half as well. And when I did finally come upon, because there wasn't as many in my area, like CrossFit gyms at the time, we were always looking, for somewhere to go. It was a friend of mine found one, and we went and we just did like one of the trial classes, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is I really, really like that. And to your point about what you were saying is the spectrum of what is taught and what is done, like in the class environment, is it just covers like all bases of aerobic fitness, strength, anaerobic threshold training, like pretty much every element of fitness, which is why I guess in the sport of fitness, sport of CrossFit rather, that they do say it's the fittest on earth, is because you're trying to cover like every aspect of fitness and see, who's kind of like the fittest. So it really, I just found that it definitely allowed for me to be at my fittest. And I, coming from a good endurance background,
Yeah.
I found it like an easy transition. And then the strength component and the gymnastics components, because they're big aspects of it too. I'm a small athlete, actually. I'm quite small. I'm like 5 foot. So the gymnastics came, quite easily to me as well, because I could move my body very well. So that as well added a whole other element, not only of excitement and interest and just different like learning skills, but just balance within, using our body. So that it was kind of 2011 is when it really kind of started. And that's when I decided that I wanted to go in that direction in the fitness industry, and got my L1 and pursued it from there.
Right. So the L1 is the level of training that you need to be a coach. You need
Yes.
to get that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I look at how you started from a young age, and I was always interested as well. I ran track in high school, and the shorter distances though. But when I got into medical school, I saw a flyer for a karate class, and I joined that karate class, and that was really how I got through medical school. And
Wow.
more physically less physically than mentally. I mean, it was an outlet that I had through medical school. And I met my wife in that class actually too. So that was a good thing as well. But I always think of like what propels one to keep going and to keep strong, because life is so hard sometimes, and we can get derailed. And I know for myself that fitness has always been a way to channel my anxiety, to channel the stress that I face. And I know that, like I said, it got me through medical school. And it's a lot because it was an outlet for the anxiety. It was an outlet for my own insecurities. It was an outlet for me to channel all of that, and to really put it into, get the physical, to put in physical. And that, when I what do they teach in medical school? They talk about cardiovascular health, but all they talk about is aerobic. And so of course they talk about running. So I was a short distance runner in high school, but then I see these other doctors, and I see, oh, they're running marathons. If they could do it, I could do it, right? So then I started training which was totally out of my comfort zone, because I was a shorter distance runner and I wasn't really built for longer distance. But, I ran a couple marathons. And so that kind of got me going. But again, it was channeling the insecurities that I had, or anxieties that I had. I was able to put it into physical fitness. And then as I got older, there was always, it's funny because every time I didn't subscribe to the magazine, but every time we went on vacation, I would always get a copy of Men's Health magazine.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. It was in the airport bookstore, or whatever. And I always picked it up, and I always used to look at the exercises that they had in the magazine. And I said, man, I really want to do those. I don't know where to start. I don't know who to go to for it. And at that time, my hip started bothering me because I had an injury playing touch football or whatever. And I ended up, that injury led to arthritis in my hip. And I ended up getting a hip replacement 6 years
Wow.
ago now. Yeah. But and so I wasn't able to, until, actually, it wasn't five, it was 6 years ago when I was introduced to CrossFit like exercises, and then 5.5 years ago to actual CrossFit. And when I started doing that, that's when I knew I had to do something with my hip because I when I was squatting and doing, I couldn't do it properly, and it wasn't good form. But then I got it fixed. I was able to 8 weeks after I got my hip replacement, I was able to do the 12 days of Christmas workout.
Oh my God.
Okay. Now,
That's impressive.
right. So my listeners who don't know what the 12 days of Christmas workout is it's just like the song goes, partridge in a pear tree, and you keep adding on the things and going backwards. And that's what the exercise, the 12 days of Christmas CrossFit workout, same thing. You do one exercise, let's say a deadlift. Then the second one that you do one deadlift. Then you might do two cleans or two whatever, two front squats or whatever. And then you go two front squats and then one clean, and then you keep building up and you keep counting down. And if I hadn't started working out, I wouldn't have recovered so quickly. In fact,
Yeah.
the physical therapy was amazed after my hip replacement. The therapist came to my house 3 days later, and they had shown me some exercises to do, and says, "Can you demonstrate them to me?" So I got on the floor, and he goes, "Whoa, what are you doing? You can't go on the floor." I said, "No, but that's what I've been doing." Yeah,
That's what I've been doing. Right.
that's what I've been doing. And he said, "Okay, yeah, I could discharge you," and then the rest was history. But as far as but getting back to talking about how CrossFit being a total body workout, you talked about your experience with running and the aerobic part, and then you had the weight training, which was separate. So you had your running and you had your weight training, and you figure, but why don't you tell everybody how CrossFit combines aerobics, strength training, posturing, and just overall healthy lifestyle?
Mm-hmm. So I think what drew me to CrossFit is interesting. You mentioned Men's Health magazine, because I used to get Men's Health magazine as well, because it wasn't as many like for women back then. And I did the Men's Health Urban Athlon, which was one of those first kind of events as well. And that kind of, again, was a segue into more of that, bringing everything together. So with CrossFit, and it's difficult to get a full understanding of it without coming in and doing it over a course of time, because you won't see everything like in one day. But it's just the combination of movements, the duration, so the time domains, and sometimes some of the workouts are longer, some of them are shorter, and even the classes and how they are structured. You start out with a really good warm up, mobilizing, because there's a big focus on movement and making sure that that you're mobilized before you do these movements, range of motion. So likewise, like you just said with yourself, the same with me. When I came from very heavily running based, when that was my primary focus in my fitness, I was starting to get really tight in certain areas, and so my hamstrings were not like very flexible, because when you're running fast, you're using your hamstrings like quite a lot. So when I start coming in, and then you're doing full range of motion squats, and again, I was like, oh my God, you're so tight. But through going through those motions, and like that with so many athletes that come in, whether they're coming from another sporting background or just, a sedentary like lifestyle, initially it can be quite challenging. And then you kind of, I think we restrict our range of motion when we're not brought through these different ranges of motions in classes and workouts like we do in CrossFit, and it does lend ourselves to moving better. But also the challenge, because a lot of the workouts are for time, bringing in that element of intensity into the workouts, because before that, like historically, like in fitness, it's just like steady state aerobic, like on the treadmill, on the Stairmaster, and they're rare that you would get people that are pushing beyond like their threshold. But what CrossFit has done is get you to do less work or more work, sorry, excuse me, in less time. So, we build in these workouts with varying different movements, whether they're body weight gymnastics, aerobic, where we're moving objects or lifting objects, and adding in the element for time. There's a sense of urgency about getting the work done, and that brings in that element of improving fitness, and then that will translate into better aerobic capacity, more strength, more lean muscle mass, and again, just from aside from the athlete perspective, like as a coach, when I was in the fitness industry as well, I really liked that the focus is on performance rather than appearance, because for the most part, when people are going to the gym, they're doing the bicep curls to build their biceps, they're doing this, and it's all about like how we appear. Whereas if you shift your focus about performance, because when you're doing it for appearance, like, when do you know that you're done? Who decides when you've met that goal? Whereas when you have a goal of like, I want to be able to run a little faster, I want to be able to, squat a little heavier, I want to get my first pull-up, I want to be able to do push-ups really well. These are goals that are measurable so that you can know when they are achieved. And by focusing on performance, then your body composition naturally does change. And then you're starting to achieve maybe that goal as well, of looking and feeling better, in your own body, in your own skin. And again, it was a really, really positive thing that I really liked about CrossFit as well. And it just got people like moving better, because that's a big focus in CrossFit is your mechanics, and how you're moving your body, and and making sure that your technique is sound, because it keeps us safer as well. It keeps us safer and getting stronger.
Yeah. And the safety part, as we get older, our muscles atrophy as we get older. It's normal. It's what happens, but not when you're doing CrossFit, because you can build muscle, and that's what people don't understand, how good it is for functional movement in your everyday life, and for movement in general. Like you said, the measurement, not only how much you could squat or bench, or bench or push up or pull up, but can you get out of a chair without using support? Can you get off the floor if you fall down? Okay. Can you stop yourself if you trip on something? And can you right yourself? Do you have that muscle coordination that you've developed through working out, through building up muscle and preventing that muscle death? And which is inevitable if you do nothing. If we do nothing as we get older, we're going to shrivel up and die. I mean, we're going to die. All of us are going to die, but you don't need to shrivel up.
The rate, exactly, of decline.
Exactly. And I was just talking with a woman yesterday in the class who's a senior or a master's, right? And she was saying how her doctor couldn't believe that she built bone density, and said, what changed in your life? She didn't want to take medications. What changed? What changed is she started doing CrossFit. And you get an aerobic workout and you lift weights. So and when I say lift weights, people have this image of, you're, like you said, the bodybuilders, you're pumping iron in the gym and you whatever. No, you're doing thrusters, let's say. So if you're doing thrusters, you have a barbell in your hand, and on that you're resting on your over here, and you go down with that, and you go up and thrust it over your head. If that's not aerobic, we know doing that, how that gets your heart rate up. I mean, there's nothing that gets your heart rate up more. But not only are you doing the aerobics, but you're lifting weights, and the weight that builds bone, that stimulates what are called osteoblasts. And osteoblasts are the cells that are the bone cells. They build bone, and you're also strengthening your muscles around the bones, so you can move better. And all of that is what we do in CrossFit, which is
and I think that there is sometimes when you don't know enough about CrossFit, there is that little bit of the intimidation factor when if you walk into a CrossFit gym, let's just say where it's fully, in full swing, and you're like, oh my goodness, like I can't do that. I mean, the beauty about CrossFit is that we say it's scalable and modifiable for every fitness level and age. So, you'll be doing some version of the same movement that's appropriate for your fitness level, and everybody starts somewhere. So, and it's a gradual process that's to your own specific needs, and you will gradually kind of like work towards those things. Because certainly, even when I was going in there, as capable as I was, there was still a lot of stuff that you're still kind of learning, like from the start, and then you just kind of build from there. And also certainly in my case, for having trained this way for such a long time, it has allowed for me to recover so much better from a lot of the different health issues that I've had, but also injuries that I've had. And I had the most recent. Last year I had shoulder surgery, and that was in August. Yeah, August. So I'm just a little over a year from that, and it was a quite a full reconstruction, like shoulder surgery. But my recovery, and I think, I would say, I would lend it to the fact that I had done just for so many years, so much strength training, and, so that all that connective tissue, all that muscle, although you do atrophy when you have to, be still and not move for, weeks and months at a time, you come back stronger. You still have this ability to rebuild that muscle, to rebuild like that strength. And like you said, although we do as we age, it's a natural progression. It's just physiology. We will lose muscle mass and strength, but we can still continue to build that and maintain that, like through our later years. And for all the reasons that you just said, even if it's not that you don't as athletic, or you're not thinking about running or lifting like heavy weights, but just so that you can move your own body, that you can, as you said, sit down and get up without discomfort, and fending off a lot of things. I mean, in my family, like osteoarthritis is in our family, and I do have early onset like osteoarthritis myself, but everything that I do is mitigating it just a little bit more. I mean, it's just going to be as a slower decline, and that's what we're looking to do, is just slow the decline of age, or at least so that we're more active and more capable through our later years. And more pain-free.
Absolutely. And just you get a couple of things you said I want to get back to. But one thing is what you said about being intimidated and walking into a class and being intimidated. I mean, all of us have been there, so we know that. We know that feeling. But I'll talk, I'm sure my wife doesn't mind me sharing this, but she's come and watched me in the open competitions and kind of intimidated and she works out a lot, does other things, not CrossFit, but I've been trying to get her to do it. So what we've done is, and I really would encourage my listeners to find a coach who's affiliated with a CrossFit gym and do some one-on-one training. So my wife and I, once a week, we have a private training with, Denise, who's the coach of my gym. And we do a private training with Denise, and I go to my classes as well. And I think that now that my wife is getting just acclimated and scaling and modifying to her level, she's going to start slowly going to classes that she feels that she can do. But I would encourage, because, getting back to, as we get older, and recovering from illness, injury. And that's what I want to talk to you more about. As you mentioned, you had surgery and I had my hip replacement. And if it wasn't for my training that I had started, I know that I wouldn't have recovered so robustly. And now I can't even think of, when I the hip, I forget which hip it was because
Right.
there's zero. Our workout yesterday was box jumps. Was rowing. We had to do, and we'll get into the talk about your injury in a second. But I did want to say this is that CrossFit we're a little nutty. Okay, so what we think is fun, other people might say you're nuts. Like, so
Right.
yesterday's workout of the day was a 26-minute time cap, and it was 400 meters on the rower, followed by 50 box jumps, followed by 40 kettlebell swings, then 800 meters on the rower, followed by 40 box jumps, followed by 30 kettlebell swings, and then 1,200 meters on the rower, followed
Ooh.
by 30 box jumps and 30 and it was fun, right?
Yeah,
But because
in our
you
world.
right in our world, but and it was, but what's fun about it is because you kind of reflect and say, wow, I actually was able to do that.
That's
And
great.
so
That's incredible.
but during that workout, you get negative thoughts and you get
Mhm.
things that say, oh, you're gonna have a heart attack, or you better stop, you're not that young anymore, whatever. So mindset and
Huge.
and actually those thoughts, and that goes through life in general. When we get those thoughts, don't actually, I say to people, don't try to stop them, because what those thoughts mean is that you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and you should expect those thoughts, because that's what I call the automatic brain. I've written about it. I wrote a book about it, and that automatic brain is to protect us from danger, threat, or vulnerability. So
Mhm.
thoughts are involved. That brain generates thoughts. That's how evolved humans do it. And you can expect, if you're approaching something out of your comfort zone, those thoughts are going to try to reel you back. And so
Mhm.
mindset is acknowledging the thoughts, realizing that they could be actually a positive thing because it means you're moving in the right direction. And that's when the gains happen. So what I want to talk to you about, Tracy, is
Mhm.
first of all, the injury, how it was impacting your life, and maybe a little bit of how you developed it. But what I'm really interested also after that is your recovery and what you had to
Mhm.
do, how your fitness helped you with that. You mentioned a little bit about that, but how your mindset and how you were able to push through some of the negative thinking that might have come up during that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more about the mindset and how that aspect of it is so, so important. And like hearing the voice, listening to it, but not necessarily succumbing to it either. Now, I have quite a bit of experience with dealing with surgery and injuries, and I will first say, as a competitive CrossFitter, okay, so I say on the spectrum of CrossFit, there's
Right.
the fitness for life, and then there's the sport of CrossFit. So I
Right.
lean more towards the sport of CrossFit. So,
Right.
and I'm competitive, right?
I'm in
So
the fitness part.
yeah, right. And I will go between the two depending on
Yeah.
where I'm at, like at any stage, like in my life or in within the year. But as a competitive athlete, I'm aware what we say is you got to pay to play. You understand that you are pushing your body a little bit beyond what is necessary to stay fit, but that's to get those extra gains, to get
Mm,
faster, to get stronger, and so on and so forth. And most of the time, we end up by pushing ourselves, getting better, and occasionally something can go wrong. And
hmm
it's not always through the training. Sometimes it's through overuse, and sometimes it's just a mishap. It's just part and parcel of the process. So I've had a couple of mishaps over the course of the years. I mean, I've been training and competing competitively for quite some time within CrossFit. So I have had meniscus surgery repairs, like three of them, two on my right knee and one on my left, microfracturing on my right knee that took me out for 3 months, non-weight bearing.
mm,
So so I understand the healing process and the mental aspect of it, which can be very, very tough at times.
mm,
But knowing how strong that I've been over the course of my training and what I've been able to push through mentally has definitely helped with managing that time when you're away from what you love and you want to be active, at the same time you want to do the right thing, you want to rehab correctly, you want to come back stronger. So this injury from last year, my shoulder surgery, was extremely debilitating in the sense of how much independence it took away from me, because it was my right arm. So that was very difficult on a day-to-day basis early on. And, the pain and discomfort, that's an aspect of it that we accept. It's part of it. But I was not in this great sense of urgency to get back too soon. I think that's really important. If you have had an surgery or a setback, that you have that patience, that you take the time to do the rehab correctly. And you're going to have dark days. You're going to have moments where it's really difficult, and when you've been so active, but there is still so much that you can still do. And that's also what you learn through CrossFit, is there's scope of things that you can still do when you have one area of your body that's just not functioning. Sometimes it's complete stop, and I'm not able to do anything at all for 2 weeks, and you got to be a good patient. But once I was able to move, it was just a matter of gradually building up of the different parts that you're allowed to do, like lower body. Once you're able to introduce that, I did stay away from CrossFit specific, because literally I was unable to. And I did like most of my rehab like at home with my physical therapist, and just doing more kind of isolation movements, just again to keep my body like strong, within reason, that I was capable of. And once I was able to use my arm, because everything initially was single arm, and you find that you can do like a lot more. And then it was just that gradual building up. And what you were saying before about your hip surgery and injury, when you look at, you were doing all those box jumps, it's like you think back, wow, a few years ago when I had the surgery, like I couldn't even envision at all. I was the same way, even though I'd come back so many times, like from other surgeries and injuries. This was very, very strange for me. Like I've had very, very strong shoulders. I was always really good with gymnastics on the rings, on the rig, and I always did take really, really good care of my shoulders. Mine was an instant that happened when I slipped on a rope climb, so it was an acute thing that occurred initially. But yeah, when I came back, it was going back to basics. I mean, right back down to doing banded, just like different pulling movement, crossover symmetry, all those little small basic like movements, the stuff that people don't like doing. But if you want to come back healthy and you want to come back stronger, you have to be like very patient. And, and then it was, then your goal would change from week to week. I want to be able to do banded pull downs, and and then it was like ring rows and little by little by little. But I did have that like that voice kind of in my head, like I said, in the middle of it, was like, whoa, should I be doing this? It's like, and you again, I mean, it was in a new body almost, and and so, and it was just a process of time, after 6 months, then you start venturing to try something different. And I'm a big proponent of building strict strength in every domain, like upper body, like lower body, because within CrossFit, and that can sometimes be why it gets a bad name, we use a kipping movement on the rig for pull-ups, and a butterfly, and then there's ring muscle-ups, there's bar muscle-ups, all those different dynamic movements. But you have to build the foundation first. You have to have that strength beforehand. And, that's as a coach and as an athlete, that's what I have always done. So I was essentially doing it myself from the beginning again, with rebuilding my shoulder. And it was a way of demonstrating that's if you go through that whole process, assuming, it was like as if I never did a pull-up ever before. I was doing it like building it from the ground up. And that's what I did gradually. And then the confidence just starts to come, slowly but surely. But then you like I said, you do have that voice coming in, which is good, because it makes sure that you're cautious, that you don't put yourself at unnecessary risk either. But that you will, as I said, gaining confidence every time things start build up and get better. And then it was was, I guess toward maybe 6 months, 7 months going into after the surgery into the following year, which would have been earlier this year, when I started venturing into the more of those dynamic movements. And again, I had such a strong foundation before coming in that, so I was able to rebuild those skills back pretty quickly once I did all those, foundational building back up again.
Yeah, well, shoulder is an underestimated joint of importance in the body. I have noticed that my patients over the years who became the most debilitated, it was because of shoulder arthritis and post-surgery on the shoulder. This shoulder surgery is very difficult to recover from, and most people don't recover 100%, and surely not enough to go back and doing those movements that you're talking about, those gymnastic movements, which is incredible, really. And that just is a testament to your conditioning, but also your willpower and your determination. And you're right, that negative voice, sometimes it can be good when you're in control of it, because then it's like me. I had some minor injuries, and those minor injuries, and it shouldn't be to scare the audience, say, oh, I'm not going to go to CrossFit because I'm going to get hurt. No, when you're doing it mindfully and you're thoughtfully, and you're aware of what you can do and not what anybody else is doing, that's when you make the progress. So, many women in CrossFit can lift much more than I can lift. Okay, so when they have a suggested weight for the workout, and I see, I used to look at, oh my goodness, that's a woman's weight. I can't do that. I got to do more. Now, when I go to the class, I have blinders on my eyes as far as when I put weight on the bar. When I put weight on that bar, I don't look and start counting up how many pounds somebody else is doing, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, whatever. I don't do that. I'm in my own lane. And, so, and that's
what's
really
appropriate for you.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that helps me stay pretty strong over the last year or so, because I had kind of a nagging injury, which basically, again, my own pride, my own ego, and the way it developed, I developed a tendonitis in my elbow, a tennis elbow kind of thing. And I remember exactly how that happened. It was we had a workout on a Friday, and there was a visiting a woman who was an incredible CrossFit athlete who probably talked to Denise and Steve, who run our gym, and asked if she could work out while she's in town or whatever. And we did our workout while she was on the side doing her own thing. And I remember we were doing the workout was push-ups and what are called L-sit presses. So you're sitting on the floor with your legs straight and your body upright, and you're push pressing weights over your head. Right. So it was going from push-ups in a minute, max push-ups in a minute, to max push press L-sit with like 10 seconds in between. The EMOMs, they're called, every minute on the minute. And I was in the back of the gym, and she was also in the back of the gym. And I had this thing this ego thing in my mind. I'm going to show her how we work out. Right. I'm going to pump out, I was pumping out the push-ups.
We've all been there.
Right. Okay. So that I did fine. I was feeling fine there, because then the next day, Saturday, there was a woman in the class who was a physical therapist. And I said, wow, Sharon, my forearms are really tight. Are you feeling that? She goes, not really. So okay, that was it. But then the workout were kettlebell swings, and I must have been gripping the kettlebell.
Vice grip.
Vice grip. And that's when it all started. And that's because I wasn't mindful. I was looking at what someone else was doing. I was thinking, and it got me. And so once I stopped doing that, and once I recovered from that, which took forever, I mean, it was months, it was terrible. I was doing Denise was showing me, I started building up muscles that I realized were weakened. And that that was actually a blessing. That injury
Yeah.
was actually a blessing for me because
Hmm.
now I built up my posterior muscles. Now, like I said, I'm going to be 65. I just started doing kipping pull-ups, kipping the toes to bar.
Amazing.
I started jumping on a 24-inch box. All of this happened within the last like 3 to 4 months. I never thought. I look at people doing those type of pull-ups and thinking, I'm never going to be able to do that. It's okay. I'm not, but you start realizing getting to a point where yes, you could do it and you're actually making gains and making
Yeah.
improvements. So
Incredible.
yeah, so that's so I'm sure that that surgery was it's no walk in the park for my listeners having shoulder surgery. And we're
Yeah.
gonna show some videos as we're talking on this podcast. I'll tell you about that afterwards, showing
Right.
Tracy what she's doing now,
Oh my
and
God.
which
Well,
is pretty
I was
amazing.
just, yeah, it was just something that you'd said there before about like with shoulder surgery and how people oftentimes don't recover like well from it. And now having been through the whole the process of that, I can see what starts to happen because it is very, very painful. And I even remember within my rehab when I'm trying to regain this range of motion, and I'm like, there's no way is this ever going to come back. And
Mm,
the thing is, and my physical therapist even told me they would have patients who would just kind of give up like
mm,
midway through the rehab because it would be so uncomfortable. And what you really, really have to want to like, and it is so important because you will lose range of motion more and more, especially if you've had a shoulder injury that as we get older. And and it's just you have to kind of like fight through it and push through, and you really do have to want to put the time in to improve, to get those gains. But like I said, haven't had that experience with CrossFit, with pushing through discomfort. I think it definitely does lends itself to us being able to cope with these setbacks and these other injuries that that may or befall us like later on. But yeah, it's just it's a long process, and it's not fun, but it's so worth it if you put the time in and you keep kind
yeah.
of working through.
Yeah, and that's what's really great about this type of exercise because, like you said, CrossFit, there's a range. There's a range. If you want to compete, you can do that. If you want the
Mhm.
fitness aspect of it, you can do that. And as I said, there's nothing in my life, and I've done quite a few different things that is total wellness. And
Mhm.
that's what I preach as a doctor. I want to walk the walk.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in healthcare, there are not a lot of people, a lot of practitioners who really do walk the walk.
Right.
They talk a big game, and they not even a big game. What am I talking about? They don't even talk a big game. They just
Yeah.
say, like you said, diet and exercise. Oh, you got to lose weight.
Right.
I'll
No
see you
guidance.
no guide.
Yeah.
I'll see
It's
you in
so,
3 months. Take this
yeah.
pill. Take this
Mhm.
pill. I'll see you in
Right.
three
That's always the
months.
answer. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
always it's always a pill. It's something like that. And it is terribly unfortunate. I mean, I really love like this conversation that we're having, like coming from you as a medical doctor and having that
Yeah.
perspective and that mindset. My experience with other practitioners is not this like at all. It's literally what you just said. It's take this pill, and again, not for myself personally, because I've always been like fit and active, but like from like family members or friends of mine who do have got out of
Mm,
shape and whatever. There's so little guidance that they get from if they get a bad, like they get the blood work back and they're told that their blood pressure is up or they're pre-diabetic or whatever. It's like, as you said, it's diet and exercise. And many years ago I had an athlete that a member come in. We say athletes because we're all athletic once we're moving.
yes. Yes.
But he came in and he was quite overweight, but he got a very bad, you know, prognosis, if you will, from his doctor. And his father had been through the same thing through his life, and he was, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic. He was like overweight, and he was very nervous about starting CrossFit, but he took that step to come in the door. And like you said, the holistic approach we're talking about, we want to get you moving. You're going to like eat well, we're going to improve your cardiovascular fitness, but then it's just the mindset, just that positive mindset that you're doing good for your body. But that, like, he got no guidance from his doctor other than, this is what your blood work says, you need to get healthy. And just by coming into that environment and having a whole different like approach and whole different lifestyle, and in a supportive environment too, like, so you've got all people in there come from all different walks of life, and everybody's supportive of one another. And and he literally turned his life around. It was absolutely remarkable, like, and he would have like this before and after. It's not even like the same person,
right?
As Corey, his name was, and he was a very, very big dude as well. Like, he was a ex-football player. So, so for him doing a lot of the body weight movements and were very, very challenging, he was able to move the weight, which was very empowering for him, like to begin with, to get him, motivated to do the work. But over the course of time, just that full balance across the board of taking care of his health was just so important. And if he had a doctor like you that would have given him a little bit more kind of like guidance, and I feel like they go out of the office and they don't even know where to begin, and you just hope that you stumble across the right people, or you're talking to the right people, maybe who have done CrossFit or who do have experience like that. They're able to help you. But it is unfortunate that there isn't better information out there being delivered by the physicians.
And that's why I say that it's often that people have to find it on their own, and a lot of times the doctor is actually going to discourage you from, especially CrossFit. I mean, if you walked into your doctor's office and like, okay, so for instance, I don't know how your orthopedist treated you after the shoulder surgery, but if you said to that, they would probably say you can never do a kipping pull up, a kipping pull up or kipping ring rows again. I mean, I would imagine, I would guess that if you pressed the orthopedist on that, they would tell you that.
Well, so with my orthopedist, like, I was very fortunate as well. He knew the sport that I did.
Okay.
He knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yes, the general conventional guidance that you're given afterwards, like, they fix your shoulder, they don't want you to break it again. So don't do this, don't do that, and whatever. But his protocol with me was, I know that you're going to do all the rehab. I know that you're going to put the work in. You're very, very dedicated, like just in that. So he, was definitely aware that I was going to maybe later on like push the envelope. So they are more inclined to say, like, don't do this and don't do that. And if that falls on the wrong ears, like to another person who isn't inclined to push themselves or try, they end up doing nothing, or or they're so fearful of trying that they end up in a worse position, because then they, as I said, they lose range of motion, they don't regain their strength again, they have an imbalance in their shoulders. And for me, it's like, if I was to do the right thing and how I rehabbed my shoulder, the one that was the reconstructed one would be stronger than my left shoulder, and and that's it. And again, orthopedists, they are, I guess, kind of geniuses in a way, like with the surgeries that they're able to perform. But oftentimes that's it. That's where they leave you. I fixed you now, But it's like, after that, the guidance that we need to get is so important, that you meet the right people, the right physical therapists, and they're always like on the overly cautious side. Nothing wrong with being cautious, and we do need that, like, and it's very measured and what we do, like, initially, so that everything like heals well. But beyond that, like, movement is so important. It really is. And and I think that's what we need to hear more of from the people who are taking care of us.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned the big guy who came in and changed his life. Many doctors would discourage that person, that guy, from doing CrossFit or
Yeah,
exercise. They say, "Oh no, you don't do it. You're gonna have a heart attack."
you're
And
going to have a heart attack.
right,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
say that that's embedded in
Alarm bells go
that's
off.
in there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
yeah.
and you know what? In defense of my colleagues, I know what they're thinking because I remember I used to send anybody like that. I would send him for. I said, I want you to start exercising, but you need to go for a stress test first. Okay, which is
Yeah,
probably a good idea, but it's the idea of being sued. So when I
yeah,
was in
of
in
course.
in, in medical practice, before I had changed my practice of the paradigm of my practice, we were seeing, 30 to 50 patients a day. It was crazy, right? And I remember one of those crazy days, this guy walked into my office in his early 50s, but he looked much older and not in great shape. And he walked in. I said hello to him, but I tell you, I remember this. The very thought that came into my head was, here's a guy now who's neglected his health for his entire life.
Mm.
If he walks out of my door and has a heart attack, I'm going to be blamed now. That's what I
Right.
thought. I
Yeah,
thought
it's
that's
terrible.
quite honestly,
Hmm.
that was my thought. So what did I do? I sent him for every single test you could imagine, which may be a good thing, maybe not, but
Right.
but the idea that I thought that I was going to be sued, and that's
That's wrong, isn't it?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is. And but that
yeah,
that is the mindset of
yeah.
most physicians
I think
that
yes.
that threat that if something
Hmm.
goes wrong, they're going to blame me. And so that's why a lot of times why it comes in that they're overly cautious, with that.
Hmm.
But anyway, Tracy, I love we could talk for hours. We
I
could definitely
agree.
talk for
Yes,
hours and
absolutely.
yeah, I definitely look forward to meeting you in person. And
Likewise.
you had a great recovery and well on your way to uh, maybe another CrossFit Masters if you could. Okay, I don't know. That's tough. That once you do one
Yeah,
of them, I mean the Open itself and going through. So what Tracy was just
yeah.
before we break, just to go the CrossFit Open, just about everyone competes in that February and March of every year. It's fun. Well, fun's relative. It's fun
Well,
for people who are in CrossFit, but it's very tough but it's challenging and it's really a great activity and to show how you've come in the sport. But from that they take the best of the best from that. Then they go to the quarterfinals, take the best of the best from that. Then they go to the semifinals, take the best of the best from that, go to the finals, which Tracy was in the CrossFit Games in Birmingham for the Masters, um, which is quite an achievement.
thank
Most of my
you.
listeners won't really fully understand how much of an
Comprehend.
achievement that is and what that means when you had to compete. But
Yeah,
anyway, congratulations on that, and
yeah.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining me on the Coach MD podcast. My
Thank you.
listeners, thank all of you for supporting this program. And until next time, I'm Dr. Charles, aka Coach MD, urging you to stay strong in mind, in
Hmm.
body, and right here in soul.